Here today we have the wonderful Lucas Aoun from Australia, who is Australia's #1 biohacker and the founder of Boost Your Biology. Thank you so much for being here, Lucas.
Yeah, awesome to be here, Ben. I'm excited to chat.
Vice versa. I mean, I've learned a lot from your material over the years, and experiments with alligator pepper and different use cases for ice, and you name it. There's all sorts of things you talk about, which is super super fun and sometimes a bit more unconventional, but they're all good. I want to start with the state of men's testosterone and fertility. Why do you think it's declining so much?
It's a great question, man. I mean, it's a real sad reality. I mean, across the board, across many countries around the world, male testosterone levels are declining dramatically. There are many different factors. When you look it up online and you look at like clinical studies, most of them will point towards obesity. Yes, I do agree obesity is playing a role, but I feel like they're sort of obviously, yes, it's important, but I personally think that microplastics and these xenoestrogens are also playing a pretty hefty role in that because they accumulate over time, right? Like there's new studies coming out that they're accumulating in literally like in penile tissue, in testes, like in the brain. Yeah, I definitely think I think it's one of those factors that as time progresses, we're going to slowly like understand the true implications of some of these compounds on our physiology.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting research of the levels of microplastic from 2018, 2019 to today, and even like they've risen at an exponential rate, which is quite scary, right? What effect do they have specifically mechanistically? Like, well, I guess we might not know that now, but is it on the free testosterone? Is it on DHT? Is it on total? Where specifically in the axis is it?
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah, good question. So there's definitely they're definitely multifaceted in terms of their deleterious effects on human physiology and biology. So I would definitely want to point out the fact that a lot of them can actually interrupt and disrupt the androgens binding to their androgen receptors. So therefore, if testosterone can't bind to its respective receptor, it cannot exert its effects, no matter how high a guy's free testosterone is on a blood test. If he's got a shitload of like BPAs or xenoestrogens in his body, then they will actually affect the sensitivity of testosterone to the receptor. And in addition to that, some of them can actually act as like even more potent forms of estrogen, like more potent than estradiol. And estradiol, as you and I know, is a growth factor, proliferative, promotes cancerous growth in some cases. So yeah, multifaceted, man. I think there's also secondary pathways as well. So looking at how they can saturate into thyroid tissue and affect the ability to convert T4 into T3, affecting iodine's actions and activities. But the good news is there's actually quite a lot of research coming out on different supplements that can block these xenoestrogens from exerting their damaging effects. So compounds like taurine, glycine, other forms of antioxidants like glutathione, NAC, these compounds are being studied now extensively to see how they can actually combat the deleterious effects of these xenoestrogens.
Beautiful. Well, first thing that comes to mind is I wonder if near infrared can also help that whole process through melatonin, recycling things in the cell. But I guess zooming out slightly, if someone was to come to you with low T on blood work, low T symptoms, and they're not feeling great, would you? I imagine you have a checklist of things you want to go down. How high up that list would be? Okay, we need to try and get rid of some sort of microplastics and things like that.
Yeah, I'd try and focus on the heavy, like the biggest needle movers first. So like let's say for example, a guy is running off 6.5 hours sleep regularly, is working a very high stress job, is CEO, executive, and is under eating and overstimulating on stimulants, and that can also include Ritalin, Adderall. I mean, I see those cases all the time. Then they're also under eating as well, so they're not getting the right nutrients. and then they're like pushing, they're basically burning the candle at both ends. Then they're also trying to stack in training. And then they're like, shit, my only options to go on testosterone. It's like, hang on a second. Let's strip it back. Let's look at, removing some of the things that are actually putting the handbrakes on your testosterone production and focus on those first. Focus on optimizing the sleep. Focus on, getting your lifestyle in check to really, just promote overall good health. Because if we did supplement with testosterone in that case, well, we're not going to be fixing all the other issues. We're probably still going to have high cortisol, still going to have high prolactin, issues with thyroid. Like, testosterone is important, but it's not the be all and end all.
Yeah. Okay. So why do you think we have all these people jumping on TRT so early? Oh, actually, do you think people are jumping on TRT unnecessarily? And how much of this like marketing around testosterone is hype versus the reality of, you need enough, but you don't need to super physiological level?
Yeah, first of all, I think there's a number of young guys that are just literally bypassing all of those important lifestyle and those lifestyle interventions, and they're just taking the shortcut and they just want to jump straight onto TRT without them actually really dialing in every aspect. And like, whilst many people say a lot of these testosterone boosters don't have any real effect, I've seen certain compounds, certain herbal extracts that have actually moved the needle, particularly when combined with things like N-clomiphene. Combining N-clomiphene with pregnenolone and DHEA, particularly with like cistanche, pine pollen, tonkat ali, catwaba, that stack there usually like removes all of the reasons why they wanted to jump onto TRT in the first place, right? Most guys are suffering from the same symptoms, man. It's the same old story. It's like, I wake up with no morning wood. I have no energy in the morning. I need caffeine. I, can't enjoy or work out after work. Struggling with resilience. I'm feeling stressed. Like, a lot of these symptoms can actually be resolved through some of these advanced supplements and compounds.
That stack would be your, I guess, as close to natural stack as you get. I mean, maybe clomiphene is questionable, but that, I mean, I can see it sort of hitting it from loads of different angles. So okay, he mentioned caffeine, which I think is a really important one. I'm actually about a week into decaf, and
Oh, wow.
actually I've realized it's probably been about a decade since I had a week off caffeine. How bad's that? So
Wow.
first 2 days were like, oh, this is not good, and actually now I feel pretty great,
Hmm.
which is kind of interesting. But from a hormone point of view, you said you see this phenotype of super high cortisol, burning candle at both ends, like nailing coffee all the time. Is it just as simple as bringing their cortisol down, and that would be the fix for that phenotype?
It's a good point. I think, yeah, definitely in those cases, if they're really like pushing the limits and they're leveraging caffeine, they're basically borrowing energy from the future with caffeine. I'm the same as you, by the way. I don't use coffee at all, only unless I'm trying to like break a PB on a certain 4-kilometer run, or if I'm actually doing something that's like ultra competitive. But apart from that, I feel like my baseline levels of energy are good enough to not need caffeine. And plus, I'm taking a bunch of different supplements as well that help with mental clarity and dopamine, that sort of stuff. So that sort of offsets the need for caffeine. But yeah, in that case, I think if an individual is like pushing too hard, if we remove all stressful stimuli, then there's a pretty good chance that testosterone levels will start to come back into effect if the individual goes more towards that like parasympathetic response, because that caffeine does really push that sympathetic overdrive. Having said that, man, caffeine itself is actually a net positive for both DHT and testosterone. Like, if you look at the literature, combining resistance training with caffeine leads to a greater testosterone increase post-workout than just resistance training without the caffeine. So like, I never tell guys, and I hate pissing off guys because they love their caffeine. I never tell them to stop coffee if they have, if their blood pressure is in check, and a lot of their blood test markers are also in check, then I think there's no real issue with caffeine.
Yeah, well, that's smart. I mean, you're in Australia, right? The coffee's amazing there. It's
Yeah.
you just piss off your whole market, right? You don't want to do that. It's interesting, actually. I wonder if I don't know if you've heard of a guy called Thomas Seeger, and he's got wonderful, I guess, lots of case studies of people doing an ice bath and then working out, and their testosterone being boosted quite a lot, specifically their luteinizing hormone. And I wonder if that mechanism is the same as the caffeine, i.e., a high cortisol spike during activity, i.e., if it's caffeine then working out, or if it's ice bath then working out, leads to a greater endocrine response. I don't know. It's kind of curious. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm actually a big advocate for any sort of ice bath or cold therapy pre-workout, not post-workout, obviously, because we don't want to blunt the hypertrophy response. But yeah, I mean, this is where a lot of my content's been like, it's sort of gone viral, which is like icing the testes pre-workout, and even like bringing an ice pack and putting it up against your balls in a sauna so that you're not cooking your balls, pretty much. I think a lot of the benefits of the cold therapy come from the surge in dopamine and norepinephrine, and people just feel like super euphoric, super energized. It's definitely stimulating the sympathetic nervous system for the following maybe like 2 to 3 hours. But I think there's like a net rebound parasympathetic response. And if you continuously do that every day, I feel like it could lead to better parasympathetic tone overall. But yeah, I'd be curious to see some research on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's one paper. There's a lot of anecdotal research, specifically with a guy who had his testicle crushed in a fire exercise. He's a firefighter, and he has one testicle, and went on TRT, didn't feel great, and committed to before I work out, I have an ice bath every single day, and his levels are like 800, which is for one testicle, it's pretty amazing, right? It's pretty great as it is. But yeah, there's one study out in 1991 where they did it with cyclists, and actually it wasn't whole body immersion of cold; it was just hand, which is even weirder. So I imagine the testicles would be greater, right? How did this whole icing the testicles come about? Because my old business partner is going to listen to this, and I remember coming to work one day and telling him like, oh, every time I go in the sauna now, I bring an ice pack, and occasionally before my workout, I'll ice my balls. Like, you got to just try it. Sounds weird, but you've got to try it. How surely you had the same response with people when you started talking about
Oh
this,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Oh man, when I remember coming across it about maybe, I think it would be 3 years ago now. And I remember what I used to do was scour the internet for different like forums and interventions. And I came across like an old bodybuilding forum, and I remember seeing these like comments on this thread on like increasing testosterone naturally. And I remember seeing this, there were like guys just raving on about like these Chinese and Russian powerlifters that used to ice their testes before trying to break a PB, like in strongman. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, what is all of this? And then I started researching something called nocturnal scrotal cooling, and I came across research papers on like men that would, cool down their testes at nighttime. They would see like a doubling or tripling effect on their sperm count, and I'm like, hang on a second, this is literally a free intervention that guys could do to double their sperm count. If anything's going to double sperm count, there's probably a very good chance that it's also going to help with testosterone production as well. At the time, there was no human clinical studies on whether or not icing could increase testosterone. And I said to myself, well, I've built up a community already. I know a lot of guys follow me for testosterone related content. Let's like just post content about it and hear what people say. And then I had guys like sending me their blood test reports, and like on average, guys were seeing like a 200 to 300 point increase in their total testosterone after just icing. And then I had couples messaging me saying that like, just after icing now they're finally, been able to conceive, and she's now pregnant, things like that. So I've actually been, in the last 6 months, I've been looking into the mechanism a little bit in greater detail. And it actually turns out that my initial theory was the fact that it causes vasoconstriction of the testes, right? That's followed by a rebound vasodilation, which leads to new blood flow, better oxygenation to the testicular tissues, and that therefore increases testicular functioning. But it turns out that there's actually testosterone gets stuck. I know this sounds crazy. Testosterone actually gets stuck in a particular part within the testicle itself called like the tunica. Tunic, I can't even remember. It's a really technical name, tunica albanus or something. And like by icing, it actually can help to liberate that testosterone into the bloodstream. So there was something pretty interesting there. I need to look into that in greater detail.
Yeah, yeah, but that's the thing. It's like, if it's one person on Reddit who tried this and no one else has been able to replicate it, it's like, well, I'm out. But there's so, even amongst my friends, there's so many case studies of blood work before and after, and through your community as well, where it's interesting to take a look, right? At least try it yourself, right? What when it comes to the group of guys with high total but low free T, how does these implementations help, or is there like a different canon we use, or you would use?
Yeah, so the whole testosterone SHBG free T pathway, it's still discussed and debated by a lot of other healthcare practitioners. My stance on it all is I still believe total testosterone is incredibly important, but obviously if we're looking at subjective symptoms and patient outcomes, then free testosterone, if it's in the mid range and or on the lower side, then that might be due to an impact on like the influence of SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. Now, SHBG isn't the devil hormone. It's not like something super nasty we have to crush and just eradicate from our physiology. That's actually not a good thing. SHBG is there to regulate all of the hormones: estrogen, DHT, testosterone, and in some cases, guys will do the following: they'll go on a super low carb diet, like ketogenic or carnivore diet minus the fruit, and then all of a sudden their SHBG goes through the roof, and their free testosterone goes down. Then you reintroduce carbohydrates that are easy to digest, and all of a sudden their SHBG goes down, their free testosterone goes up, and they're coming back to me saying, man, I feel so much better. Like my energy's back. I feel great. So like, I think there's definitely a link there. And also there's a range of different supplements that can help to drop that SHBG. You've got basic ones like boron, tonkat ali, vitamin D, zinc, magnesium, stinging nettle root. They can all help. I would also like to mention ostarine as a sneaky way to lower SHBG instead of using something like Anavar. And I'm talking literally 3 to 5 milligrams of ostarine. You'll see it listed online like 20 milligrams, 25 milligrams. Forget it. That's way too high. 3 to 5 milligrams can actually lower SHBG. And I've actually seen that happen both in my own blood test results and also clients as well.
What is ostarine?
Ostarine is an anabolic SARM. It's a selective androgen receptor modulator. And it's currently being studied, funnily enough, to offset the muscle loss from being on GLP-1 agonists.
Wow.
So like, that's well known now that these drugs, they help with weight loss, which includes muscle loss. And they're now studying ostarine to offset the muscle loss from being on these drugs. So if you look up ostarine, you will see that it is hepatotoxic. Yes, it is. That's dose dependent though. Like if you look at the long-term literature, at 3 milligrams of ostarine, that's a really low dose, by the way. 3 milligrams you won't see on websites because they're always in abusive doses. 3 milligrams of ostarine preserved muscle tissue, prevented the catabolic nature of cortisol, things like that. And it did not affect total testosterone, but it did lower SHBG.
Well, Wow. I imagine if you take enough of it, though, it will crush your total and sort
Yeah.
of the whole axis, right?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, cool, cool. Well, yeah, definitely do that with medical supervision if you have no idea what ostarine is. Um, so when it comes to, I'm trying to sort of close out testosterone. I guess the last bit would maybe be DHT,
Hmm.
and you see a lot of good use cases of why it's worth actually trying to optimize for DHT as well as good free and good total. Why should someone care about DHT?
Yeah, yeah. So DHT, I like to describe to men as like the older brother of testosterone, the older, wiser, more powerful, stronger brother of testosterone. And the reason I say that is because when guys try to boost their testosterone levels, oftentimes they're trying to boost it to improve confidence, reduce anxiety, improve libido, improve energy. But what they don't realize is that a lot of these benefits actually come from testosterone's conversion into DHT. And then if you look at DHT itself, which is a hormone that both you and I and most guys out there, or every guy out there, is producing every single day, DHT has a metabolite and also like it has secondary breakdown pathways that cause the production of allopregnenolone, which is a neurosteroid, and that's also very powerful anxiolytic, reduces anxiety. So when guys deliberately crush or block DHT production, many like using finasteride or other powerful DHT blockers or palmetto, they oftentimes will run into issues because their total T is just not high enough, and so then they're going and blocking DHT, and then they're complaining of feeling like more moody. They're not waking up with morning wood. They feel anxious. They feel like their mood's not there. So I think DHT, it's really misunderstood. And also, it's not the only hormone that's responsible for prostate growth as well. You'll hear about DHT being, the growth factor there, the stimulator. Personally, I think estrogen, cortisol, and prolactin are more of the heavy drivers behind things like BPH and prostate growth.
That's super interesting. I think that I know we've got Dr. Abraham Morgenthaler coming on in the next couple of months, and his whole sort of non-consensus view is, testosterone actually doesn't drive any prostate growth at all, right? It actually just shrinks it, which is super interesting. Can't wait to talk about that with him. But okay, and so to just sort of wrap up the testosterone piece, we have, we've covered SSGB, we've covered free testosterone, we've covered total, and you mentioned this canon. I just want to double click on this canon of things that people could take. Could we go through that list and just sort of just maybe briefly like how it actually works and what mechanism it plays?
Yeah. So part of that protocol, like the herbal extracts and things like that. So we got the pine pollen, shilajit, tonkat ali, and cistanch. So pine pollen, shilajit, tonkat ali, and cistanch. These ones here, they do work in tandem with one another. Like they're not all working on the exact same pathway. So, for example, cistanch does help to secrete luteinizing hormone. It does actually help with that pathway, which is top down. It also helps to upregulate GnRH expression in the brain. So that's gonadotrophin releasing hormone. And it also has some pro-anabolic properties and androgenic effects as well. So then you combine that with tonkat ali, which lowers SHBG, reduces aromatase, so blocking testosterone's conversion into estrogen, reduces cortisol, also supports dopamine. Then you've got the shilajit. Shilajit is a mineral pitch that has been pretty well studied to support male physiology. I find shilajit actually enhances the effects of other herbs. When you combine it with other things, it actually potentiates the effects of other things and other compounds, which is something that I learned when I was studying, as I was studying naturopathy. I spoke to one of the best formulators here in Australia. Shout out to Matt Legg. He's actually one you might want to get on the podcast. He taught me about the beneficial effects of shilajit and how the fulvic acid can actually drive other herbs into the cell, which is pretty cool. And then what am I talking? Shilajit, tonka, cistanch. Yeah, pine pollen. Pine pollen's also part of that as well because it's Mother Nature's most potent form of phytoandrogens. So it's like the opposite of soy. It's like the male equivalent of soy. It's like, what can a guy eat that's not estrogenic? Well, it's pine pollen. So the pine pollen works out really well. So that entire protocol might be worth linking in the. I've actually built out trtfree.com. I've got the full protocol at trtfree.com. If any guy wants to check that out, it's got like dosages, how to cycle, that sort of stuff.
Beautiful. Yeah, we'll make sure that's in the show notes for sure. And then, so just wrapping that up, so we got that protocol. Keep your stress down. Make sure you don't eat. Just, I mean, keto and carnivore. Know that your SHGB probably will rise, and you might lower your free T, and all the basics, right? I mean, I'm trying to think. That's the bulk of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think also, I know it's probably like a hidden cause as well. Is I've had a lot of guys message me recently saying that they've actually been diagnosed with a varicocele, which is an enlargement of the veins that in the testes. So like that's actually a hidden cause for low testosterone. It's affecting quite a number of men around the world. And also as part of that is wearing polyester underwear, man. It's really not good. Like I've seen studies where men that wear polyester underwear are basically infertile. Like this, what happens is, when you wear a polyester t-shirt and you take the t-shirt off and it causes it gives you the static charge. Well, the same thing happens when you're wearing polyester underwear, but that static charge is happening on a micro scale every day because you're rubbing the material up against your testes, and that's heating up the testes. Anytime the testes get too hot, then your fertility is going to go down.
Right, and actually, that's what happens with the varicocele, right? The blood can't pull back in, and so the temperature rises. Yeah, easy. There's some easy fixes for that as well, but you got to get on top of it. So if you do have that, go see someone would be my suggestion. Okay, cool. Well, I think that's a pretty depthy dive into testosterone. Definitely, our audience can take a lot away from that. I want to shift gears to a question I like to ask people like yourself because they always got interesting answers. If you could go short, bet against some health protocols, some compounds, maybe what would they be? And if you could go long, some health protocols, bet for over the next 5 years, what would they be and why?
Yeah, so I would actually bet against the use of melatonin. And this is like, it's going to cause a lot of like people are going to get disgruntled by this. I don't have anything massively against melatonin, but I do have something against it in the wrong context. So for example, if an individual is suffering from jet lag, melatonin is going to be amazing. Like it literally solves that. It will solve that. Resynchronize your rhythm. Then you wear your blue blockers and you don't need melatonin. I think what people are not understanding about melatonin is its very powerful effects on mood the following day. And I know a number of clients who've used, including myself as well, even like 5 milligrams of melatonin can lead to typical, like I'm talking typical anti-dopamine effects the following day. Like they'll feel zero motivation, like just feeling really, really crappy. They lose their sex drive as well. A lot of people I know lose sex drive on melatonin. That could be because it's lowering aromatase or estrogen, possibly, because it's also used to treat breast cancer and things like that. It's very powerful. Look, there's a lot of pros, but there's also some cons. So like if we're looking at a condition where somebody's very sick, right, and you've got the flu or the C word, like the use of melatonin is going to be very beneficial. Like it's a powerful antioxidant, somewhat even more potent than glutathione. So it's like, yeah, but then it's like, well, if you're going to use an antioxidant, why not just take glutathione with other things as well? Like there's other tools at your disposal. So I would say that's like my bet against melatonin. my bet four as like an up and coming, like what do you call it? Like an underdog supplement is actually going to be a particular herbal extract from Brazil that I've been very passionate about for the past like 5 years. It's called Catuaba. Now it's spelled Catuaba, Catuaba, Catuaba. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, this guy, this is biased because he just released a Catuaba supplement, and he's just trying to sell his product." But deep down, I know that Catuaba is a very, very versatile herb because it's working on the dopamine system and it's doing it in a way that is sustainable. There's no come down. There's minimal tolerance, if not sometimes reverse tolerance. And basically it's very well known in Brazil as like a famous aphrodisiac. So if you go to South America and you mention Catuaba, like pretty much everyone will know, you want to have a good night. You're going to go out and party or whatever. It is actually from the same like plant family as cocaine, but it doesn't actually contain the same alkaloid. It might contain similar alkaloids in terms of its effects on dopamine, but it's pretty robust in its effects. And I think that in the next couple of years, like people got really crazy about Shilajit, and Shilajit's awesome, and also really crazy about Tonkat Ali. But I think everyone's going to start to shift their attention more towards Catuaba.
It's interesting. I wonder who do you think would be the best use case for Catuaba?
Like a particular case study, you mean?
Like who should maybe think about trying to supplement with Catuaba?
Oh, well, perfect question. Yeah. So any guy that's like been striving to optimize testosterone, and maybe they've actually, they feel like the testosterone's pretty dialed in, and now they're looking for that extra boost in terms of like energy, mood, libido, that sort of stuff. That's where Catuaba can really shine, is like adding the cherry on top. It can also work really well for those who don't have that like social confidence as well. Like particularly they're looking for an alternative to alcohol or drugs. Catuaba can do a pretty good job at like making someone feel a bit more socially fluent, more confident in social settings. Like I've had many experiences early on. Like I've known about this herb for many, many years. It's not super underground, but it's like a lot of people just don't know about it. I remember using Catuaba before going out on a date, and it was actually a double date. And I remember cracking a joke. It was just because I was in one of those, that mood where you're like feeling, you're sarcastic, you sort of feel a bit tipsy, but you're not. That's what Catuaba enabled for me. And I remember cracking a joke so funny that she ended up spitting water into the other girl's drink. It was because it was just, I can't repeat it. You had to be there in the moment. It was just very funny.
Okay, so it sort of unlocks this, I don't know, kind of like free spirited energy, right? It's definitely something to explore. Is it? I mean, I know in the UK we've got the novel food thing. So if you're ordering like Tomcat is novel, so you can't really get it that easily here. Where does it fall in that spectrum in Australia? And is it easy? Is it accessible and all that?
Yeah. We've actually been in touch with a massive distributor of supplements in the UK, a company called nisupplements.com. They are going to be stocking our particular Catuaba in the next coming probably few weeks, which is awesome. But apart from that, we had our product manufactured in America, and we had it third-party tested by Alchemist, and they're like the best for third-party testing to verify that it actually was Catuaba. And to be fair, man, it's not easy to source legitimate Catuaba because a lot of it is actually fake, and it's easy to fake. So we took our time. It took a long time to find a legitimate Catuaba, and we just took no shortcuts. So we called ours Catua Pure. We've trademarked that. So yeah, it's definitely going to be. It's an interesting one. I'll have to send you a few bottles to try yourself.
Love to, 100%. That'd be great. I mean, that sort of slow wave dopamine peak without the crash sounds very appealing. And yeah, love to give it a go for sure. What other thinking of, I mean, I'm thinking of like use cases you could take that could be for brain health, could be for, motivation, things like this. I think it's a nice segue into nootropics and productivity. What what how do you approach that if someone comes to you and says like, look, Lucas, I feel like I used to be productive, I'm not that productive anymore. I want to try and get my brain function back to where it was, like, help me out. What do you do?
Yeah. So first of all, what I've found from a brain health perspective is what works really well is like focusing on mitochondrial function and just really ramping that up dramatically. And that can be as simply as just like integrating very powerful mitochondrial enhancers, things like microdosing methylene blue. It could be D-ribose, which is a powerful like sugar molecule that synthesizes ATP, creatine monohydrate, coenzyme Q10, PQQ. Like these compounds, whilst they're not directly marketed as like nootropics per se, they're not actually like strictly nootropics. When you focus on just ramping up mitochondrial biogenesis and protecting the mitochondria, I find that has a pretty powerful effect on wiping away like brain fog. And then when you stack it with compounds that support dopamine and acetylcholine, I've got like a nice little recipe. It's like, let's focus on increasing dopamine and acetylcholine and GABA and drop serotonin. And then also modulate histamine. If we focus on that, then the net outcome is usually somebody that feels motivated, energized, can focus for hours, doesn't feel anxious, feels just good overall. And we can do that from the GABA perspective. That could be taking 5 grams of taurine. It's like, you've got something like taurine. Taurine increases GABA. At the same time, it supports mitochondrial function by acting as an antioxidant. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone.
Mm.
You could also, combine other amino acid precursors like L-phenylalanine, which I just learned today that L-phenylalanine can actually increase GLP-1.
Really?
Which is ridiculously cool because phenylalanine I've been using over the years pre-podcast. I even had some before this to increase energy and mood, and it's really cool.
My background is health startup things, and my first business was sort of functional effervescent tablets. So we had one for focus, and there was a lot of I can't even say it, phenylalanine in it, but we couldn't actually sell it in the UK because of all sorts of stuff. But the original version had that in, and I remember giving it to my mum. It just one morning, like years ago. I was like, "I'll try this, see what you think." She was just like charged and loving life. She's like, "This is amazing. I love this." It's quite potent stuff. I want to just go back quickly to methylene blue, because I think not many people would have heard of that. So why is it getting all the rage, and what is it?
Yeah, so funnily enough, if you look up methylene blue, I remember researching it quite some time ago that it's actually the very first synthetic drug ever developed by man. So it was developed and released in 1876, which is a very long time. Initially used to treat like malaria and like viral infections and also certain types of blood disorders. But we're talking big dosages. We're talking like 50 to 100 milligrams. We're not talking about like the microdosing territory, which is what I recommend, less than 1 milligram. And so what's really interesting about methylene blue is that it actually acts as an alternative electron carrier in the electron transport chain. And that basically translates to supporting ATP production. Now, that's a big deal because like ATP is the body's energy currency, and most people respond very well to creatine, which also does the same thing. But if you look into literature, methylene blue has also been studied in like Alzheimer's disease as well. It's not approved for use for that, but it did make its way through some pretty robust clinical trials. And that's because they believe that methylene blue can actually reduce plaque formation in the brain, reduce amyloid plaque, and then also definitely helps with acetylcholine production as well. And it's one of those ones where if you use it for the first time, like I remember I actually vividly remember the very first time I took it. I remember this was back when I was studying for my naturopathy exams, and I remember going to the library, the state library, and had like I felt like such a little cool young guy, like just with my blue water going into the state library. And I remember just like deliberately like mixing it around and looking at other people to see if they'd notice me mixing it. And I'm just like hoping that people would be like impressed by it, because I was just, obviously wanting attention.
You would have been there. It's like, oh, this? Don't worry. You wouldn't know. Something you haven't heard of, right?
Yeah. And then I remember sipping on it as I was studying, and then it took a while for me to subjectively notice any real effect. It took about an hour and a half or so. And people might say it's placebo, but no, my comprehension speed, memory recall, and just like fluidity felt like it improved within a few hours.
Wow. Yeah, it seems very controversial, but it is popping up everywhere. I'm actually yet to try it. Do you still take it?
Not regularly. I've got some, but I rarely use it. I'm sort of always trialing different things, but I also learned that it may actually, a bit of debate on this, it may actually lower nitric oxide, which is not something that I personally would want, because I'm training and blood flow is important, things like that. So
Yeah.
it also may inhibit monoamine oxidase, but again, that's at high doses. And that, if I'm taking things that increase serotonin, that might interfere with that. So
Yeah. It's the trade-off with all these things, right? You can never really do one thing, right? And there's no free lunch. You pull on this, something else comes, and yeah. I mean, how do you think about that? Because as you said, you trial lots of different things, and by optimizing one thing, something's going to give somewhere else. So how do you run your experiments? Like, how do you think about it?
Man, it is like the ultimate biohacker question, which is like, how do you not get too enthusiastic and try so many different things at once, and like be very, very disciplined with like trying to isolate variables, right? It's pretty hard to do, because like obviously you and I know, like not every day is going to be the same. You may not eat the exact same. You may not sleep the exact same. You might have life stresses that throw you off emotionally, things like that. But I try my best to keep a really like strict log on my phone, but I just use like the Evernote app, which basically just keeps track of everything that I'm basically taking and trialing. But the biggest mistake I see people make is like they just jump in and they try everything all at once. They'll try methylene blue, they'll try creatine, they'll try taurine, they'll just try everything all at once. It's like, how are you going to know which ones, because you might get some, like you said before, you might get a positive effect in one area, but then you might throw off a different pathway. Yeah, how are you going to know if you're trying all of them?
Yeah, so a more systematic. But I know I'm very guilty. I'm that guy in that camp. Be like, yeah, great, all at once. It's funny on creatine. I think. Do you think creatine is vastly overrated or really underrated?
Uh, Depends for which demographic. I mean, like I think for like an early teen, like a 16, 17, 18-year-old guy that doesn't want to mess with hormones too much, I think creatine can be pretty powerful if he's, playing soccer or doing sprinting, stuff like that, and also trying to pack on muscle. Then you've got like so many other options when you're like 25 plus. There's like heaps of compounds you can play with. But well, yeah, what are your thoughts? You think that there's
Well, I think everyone has a bit of a different. I think it depends on what your base neurotransmitter profile is. I think because for me, if I take creatine, if I don't take it in the morning, I won't sleep that well at night. It's really sensitive for me. It's like a stimulant, though it's not a stimulant for me. And I also like a hyper responder physically to it. Like it's almost like I don't know. It's physically it seems to work quite well for me. Like very quick to be saturated in my muscles, and I feel it a lot in sprinting and lifting weights and things. So for me, it's potent, but I got to not high doses mess me up a little bit. If I think. How about yourself?
Yeah, interesting.
Do you take it?
Yeah, no, I went through a period of my life where I was, probably taking it like every day for about 2 years when I was playing semi-professional soccer. So I was obviously looking for the sprinting benefits, the recovery. It definitely helps, man. Like I was using that with like acetyl L-carnitine, citrulline malate. I was building my own pre-workouts back in the day. Like I was just,
Yeah.
I love the idea of being able to. It's like what is it? Like DIY, do it
Mm.
yourself sort of process. Such an autistic way of living life.
You preach to the choir, mate. You preach to the choir. It takes one
Yeah.
to know one, right? But that's really brilliant because you got skin in the game with it, right? We're keeping that in. You got skin in the game with all this stuff, which is great. Like it's not just you'll parrot things you won't try. No, for better or for worse, you'll try these things, which makes you such a valuable resource for this community, right? So it's
Yeah, I mean, hopefully I'm like a beacon of like I want to put forward information. I want my legacy is like I want guys to remember that this Lucas guy, he mentioned this, and I benefited greatly from his content, or I learnt about this from his content, and I've integrated it. I get messages quite a lot, and even like Valentine's the other night, going out with my girlfriend, like just some random guy came over to the table and says like, "Hey man, I follow you. I follow you on Instagram. I love your content." I'm like, thanks, man. Like I can't, I forget that my content is even heard by
yeah, well,
real humans.
it's valuable. Maybe that guy on Valentine's Day, he took some, a Colonia Carver off the back of your recommendation, right? Like, that's a very niche reference. Maybe we should talk about some of the more niche stuff. So, from me, my highlights from you that I've learned is obviously the icing is hilarious, but amazingly effective as well. So, really great. And the alligator pepper. Let's talk about that, and then maybe a Colonia Carver, because alligator pepper is, I think, and I learned it from you. I think it's the cheapest. It's the supplement, if you want to call it a supplement, to pepper, but it's the thing that's the cheapest that moves the needle the most for me personally. It's unbelievable. How did you come across that?
Oh man, it's like if you had a choice to select a pepper, you got like normal black pepper, and then you got a pepper called alligator pepper or grains of paradise. Which one would a guy choose? Like, obviously, it's so easy to just go into the kitchen, swap it out, and use this type of pepper, grains of paradise. What's interesting about it, man, is that the constituents found in grains of paradise are very similar to what's found in ginger. Now, ginger's been studied to boost testosterone. It's actually pretty well known for that effect. It increases luteinizing hormone. Grains of paradise appears to share similar like constituents as ginger, so you would expect that it would have similar effects, but it also increases thermogenesis and also total daily energy expenditure. So it actually increases the number of calories you burn at rest, even if you didn't exercise. It's like a proper thermogenic, similar to like chili, capsaicin, things like that. But yeah, I think the literature is pretty awesome. It increases cholesterol conversion of cholesterol into pregnenolone, helping with the steroidogenic acute regulatory protein, that sort of stuff. It's probably also working on some of the CYP enzymes in the liver, having an effect there. But yeah, I mean, like all the guy really needs to do is grab some pepper, grains of paradise. You can even chew them. Have you ever tried chewing the actual?
That's all I do. Yeah, I honestly, it's I'm sort of outing myself here on a podcast, but if I have them in my suit pockets, if I ever go into town for a meeting or whatever it is, just I'm ready to go. For me, it's a nootropic that just is wonderful. Although I don't shut up when I take them, right? So maybe only a few grains, not the whole pack. But yeah, chewing them pretty effective. But that's what mechanistically is happening to my neurotransmitters. It feels very
Yeah.
dopamine.
Oh man, yeah. So what you're saying is like when you chew them, you actually distinctively feel like an elated feeling, right? Like you feel like
100%.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember actually when I first tried it, I did experience that exact feeling. And I also got that from, I don't know if you've ever done this, but cardamom, the pods.
No. Oh,
You
cardamom pods. No, I haven't tried that. I mean, at Christmas,
man,
but not. Um,
that actually, and also cardamom pods. If you chew the seeds inside the pod, it also gives a similar effect. It's like the essential oils. They're like absorbed under your tongue and in your mucosal membranes. They actually ramp up acetylcholine pretty powerfully. It'd probably be like the equivalent of taking 600 milligrams of alpha GPC as a choline source, and then also, if anything irritates the body or is hot or spicy, the body releases endorphins. So you're probably getting a bit of an endorphin rush as well from the pepper, because it's bitter and it's strong. So it's probably giving that, like, you're probably getting some nice opioids released into your brain as well.
Mate, this again, outing myself a little bit, but if I wake up in a sluggish mood or anything, the protocol I got is an ice bath, alligator pepper, black coffee, and then Norwegian 4x4 on a bike, and I'm right as rain. Like nothing's bothering me that day. I'm sweet. But yeah, it's an interesting thing because it's so cheap. It's just a pepper, right? It's not some expensive
Oh,
thing.
that's actually that I love that little morning stack. I in the last like couple of weeks I've had a few like bit dull day, not dull, just like lacking my true spark.
Mm.
And I'm like, what do I do back in those days when I was like really trying to ignite the engine and go into like 6th gear? I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I would either do sprints, like do a sprinting workout, take phenylalanine, all the dopamine boosters, and then bang, I'm back to normal. Like just feeling motivated, driven, inspired. Speaking of inspired, not physically inspiration, but like the assault bike. Have you ever
Mm.
used the assault bike?
Yeah. Well, I used to do lots of sort of reasonably competitive CrossFit and love the thing, love hate thing with it. But yeah, it's dreamy.
Yeah, yeah. Like this morning, yeah. Basically, what I do, it's a pretty weird workout, and I don't know if anyone else would ever do this similar sort of workout. But basically, it's a race to 4 miles, like as fast as you possibly can to 4 miles. It's not like 4 miles takes, well, at least it takes me 9 minutes and 4 seconds. Like I cannot
On
get,
the assault bike.
yeah,
Okay, that's a challenge for everyone. That's good. 4 miles on the assault bike. Jesus.
yeah.
All right, I need
It's
to try.
not like, dude, think about it. You're on the assault bike and you're maintaining about 350 watts for like 9 minutes. It depends on the machine that you've got. Some of the old ones, it's pretty easy to get that, but the new ones, to hold 350 watts on average for 9 minutes, it's my heart rate's about 168 to 170 almost the entire time.
Yeah, that's brutal. I mean, I know what you mean about the old assault bikes because you can get a spring with it, and there was one at the old gym I used to do in Singapore, and any like competitive CrossFit thing, everyone would be going for that one because it springs back and it kind of works with you. But yeah, the newer ones they're proper dicks, right? They're not easy. But okay, that's
Yeah.
a good challenge for everyone. 4 miles on an assault bike, 9 minutes. What?
Let me know your time.
I will.
If you can get sub 9 minutes, damn, like that's fast.
Well, I don't know. We're probably not anymore, but we'll see. I'll try it. I'll let you know. Probably get
Yeah.
nowhere near that, but okay, love it. Well, quickly on a Colonia Cava as well, because that's a super interesting compound that not many people have heard of.
Yeah, Colonia Cava. So what I was doing at the time when I discovered a Colonia Cava, I was looking for natural anabolics, like natural compounds that can increase follistatin and decrease myostatin. Have I got that inside out? Hang on. Increasing myostatin. Hang on. Just give me a sec. I'm just checking
When
that.
you say myostatin, I just think of the myostatin frogs. If you Google that, that's a very weird rabbit hole. You see these absolutely jacked up frogs.
Oh
They're nice
yeah, and the
way.
dogs as well. The dogs as
Oh,
well.
crazy.
Yeah. So okay. So decreasing myostatin and increasing follistatin. Yeah. So basically, Yeah, Eclonia cava was one of those natural compounds alongside epicatechin from dark chocolate, which is another reason why dark chocolate's amazing. Like I love dark chocolate. Um, Eclonia cava is a brown algae. It's a brown seaweed. And I remember looking up the insane amount of research from Japan. They spent like over $33 million researching this particular seaweed, like all these different companies. And I'm like, what's so special or unique about it? Like why everyone just, particularly in Australia, people only know about wakame. Like it's all they ever, or just like the basic, or nori seaweed, for example. But then I'm like, what is with this Eclonia cava stuff? Like, why is it so heavily researched? Then I realized some of these insane like constituents, these fluorotannins that are found in this Eclonia cava, have a ridiculously long half-life in the human body. It's like a 12-hour half-life, which means they last a long time in the body. And then I remember reading up like it comparable to Viagra in terms of increasing blood flow and circulation. And I'm like, surely not. How could that be, on that level? And then it's like, well, it's basically regenerating endothelial cells so you can produce nitric oxide. So it's like a great long-term blood vessel dilator, similar to like beetroot or pomegranate or rocket. That also appears to have really positive effects on sleep as well. So Eclonia cava before bedtime, I remember going through a phase where I would take it before bed, and you would wake up just feeling like there's no way you could fall back asleep. That's like the quality of the sleep you get from that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, we tried to put it in a sleep product in the UK, but no go. And yeah, other things happen. But I agree. My experience with it is echoes your own for sure. Some quick fire questions to finish, if we may. This one it kind of throws people. It's either hit or miss. So if it's a miss, no worries, and we'll pretend I never asked. What is one belief that most people disagree with you on that you think is true?
All right. I'm going to say the theory behind which ashwagandha causes anhedonia or emotional numbing. A lot of people are denying or like ruling out my theory that it's 5-HT1A serotonin receptor desensitization. It's highly technical shit we're talking about. But yeah, that's I would say, because I've had people even critique it and they're like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But I don't know, man. Like my gut feeling is telling me, and looking at the literature, like I think that is the pathway.
Mm. Yeah, ashwagandha gets so on my list of overhyped. I think it's that. I mean, for some reason, it doesn't agree with me, and I think it does blunt cortisol, but also there's a lot of other downstream effects that don't agree with a lot of people as well. Okay, super interesting. If it could be only three supplements you could take for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Okay. I got asked this on another podcast the other day. So I feel like it depends what mood I'm in when I respond to this, but I'm going to say number one, taurine. That has to be there. Why? Because it's anti-stress, anxiolytic, antioxidant, longevity.
What dose?
Number two, what's that?
What dose?
3 to 5 grams a day.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. It also improves liver glycogen storage and lowers liver enzymes, does all that. The second one, man, I'm really starting to fall in love with a particular supplement that Lance Armstrong was using as part of his cycling performance, and it's called Actovigen. It's every time I use it, man, it just makes everything easier, including physical activity and also mental. It's like I don't have a deficit in my brain. I don't have an Actovigen deficiency. This is basically it's a deproteinized calf blood extract. It just massively improves tissue oxygenation, and it's like VO2 maxing in a bottle.
Great.
Basically.
I'm in.
Yeah. And then number 3, man, I really like boron. I respond pretty well to boron. I just realized today, I'm like, I don't know why. I don't know. I neglect it because I think it's just so basic, but it's like, nah, this is actually having an effect on my energy. Like, I do feel more energy when I use it. I do feel a little bit stronger. My joints feel better. I just feel great on boron.
Echo with boron as well. If I play around with ketosis quite a bit, and it's wonderful. I love the brain boosting effects, and stimulates GLP-1, all this kind of stuff, and the epigenetic effects that are downstream of it. However, I don't want my free T to go low, and boron seems to keep that quite nicely in place. So not as high as I would be without, but it's an interesting compound.
Nice.
Lucas, I could talk to you all day, man. This is really, really fun. But I'm sure you've got better things to do. So we'll end it there and maybe do a part 2 down the line. But where can we find you? Where can we keep up with everything you're up to?
Yeah, no, I appreciate coming on the podcast, man. It was really, really fun. And it's also just good to jam it out with guys like yourself who are fully into it as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, definitely Boost Your Biology on YouTube. If anyone wants to check out, there's so much free content there. So that's Boost Your Biology on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram as well. They can just search my name, Lucas, surname's Aoun, Aoun.
Wonderful. Thanks, man. Appreciate you. And we'll speak soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.